grassy meadow on page 314. So, but
At what point did you start to write outside the confines of the Song of Ice and Fire cycle? And I'm thinking here of the Dunk and Egg Hedge Knight stuff, because that seemed, I mean, that was published quite early was that conceived as part of this story that just didn't fit? How did that come about?
that was Robert Silverberg's fault.
Right.
Robert Silverberg decided he was going to do an anthology called Legends, which consisted of original stories. He wanted 10 fantasy writers, each writing a story in their fantasy world, an original story, never before published. And he was offering what was quite a substantial advance, or I think a record advance for a story in any anthology. So, and his lineup was amazing. It was, Terry Pratchett and Stephen King were going to be in this, and Anne McCaffrey, and all of the best-selling fantasy writers. And I was just getting into my series then. I really didn't belong in that number, but I knew that I wanted to be in this book. So when he invited me to be in this book, I gleefully accepted. And then I had to think, well, what am I going to write for this book? I'm still in the middle of writing. I think I was still in the middle of writing Clash of Kings. I mean, the only book out then was Game of Thrones. Well, am I going to write a story about Tyrion or Arya or Jon Snow? No, I can't do that. I have to save that for the book. I have to do this. I have to do a prequel. So I started thinking about my history and what would be a good area to write it, and I came up with the Dunk and Egg stuff. I was particularly attracted, that whole story is built around a tournament, and I love medieval tournaments, and reading about them, writing about them. There's, of course, some of them in the main books, but this was an opportunity in a time of peace, not war, to look at a medieval tournament with all its pageantry and the jousting and the combat, and reveal a little of Westerosi history. And like many other things, it grew. I mean, I gardened it. I started it, and suddenly it was all there. Actually, I was so long doing it that Bob tried to throw me out of the book. I was late delivering Clash of Kings, which everybody knew about, and he was approaching. He'd gotten a lot of money for this anthology, and he wanted to deliver it on a deadline. So all the stories were due at the end of the year on December 31st. And he said, George, I hear you're so late from the book. I can't afford my book to be late, so I'm dropping you from the book, and we're going to replace you. And I said, no, you're not. I have a contract here, and I'm not late yet. You may think I'm going to be late, but I'm not late yet. So you have to keep me in the book. So that's why Legends actually has 11 stories in it, not the original 10. He actually replaced me and found another guy, but I refused to be replaced. And I wrote the story, and God damn it, I got it to him on December 31st, which is at the same time, as I understand it, like 5 other stories came in, so I'm not the only writer who pushes things. And actually, I think that story, that was one of the best decisions I ever made there, was because there was a real jump in my sales figures between Game of Thrones and Clash of Kings. And I think that story in Legends had a lot to do with it. I've had a lot of people come up to me over the ensuing years and say, I'd never heard of you. I bought Legends because there was a new Stephen King story in it, but I loved your story and I started reading your stuff. Or, I'd never heard of you, but I bought Legends for the Terry Pratchett story, and then I read your story in it, and it was great, and all that. So I think I gained a lot of readers by being in Legends.
Do you plan to do any more of that? Have people here read the Dunk and Egg stories? Yeah. Do you plan to do any more of them? Is this one of the projects at HBO?
I do. I've written 3 to date, and I think I need to write another, 9, something like that. But I have pretty well their entire lives in my head. And of course, all those things will become more detailed as I write them. But first I have to finish. I have this book, The Winds of Winter. I have to finish that, and then I can write another Dunk and Egg story, and then I write A Dream of Spring, and then I write another Dunk and Egg story. At some point in there, I have to write the second part of Fire and Blood. So I have my work cut out for me. Why am I talking to you here? I should be home writing.
Well, you know, George, I wasn't going to ask about the Windsor. Tell me about, I mean, you obviously love, or you seem